There's a line for every single one of us. A line that, if crossed, changes everything. For most folks, that line is drawn right around their family, especially their children. Emma was a good kid, quiet, just trying to fit in at her new school. And she was doing exactly what her father taught her. Stay aware, stay calm, and don't make waves. But the school bullies mistook her silence for weakness. They pushed her, humiliated her, and then they crossed that line. They spread vicious lies about her father, a retired Navy SEAL, calling him a coward. When she was cornered and finally fought back just to escape, the school punished her. That's when she sent her father a simple, 3-word text that would change everything. So the question is, what happens when a man who has faced down the world's worst enemies walks into a high school to confront 2 teenage boys who just crossed his one unbreakable rule? The house smelled of fresh paint and old cardboard. For 15-year-old Emma Carter, it was a familiar scent, the perfume of a new beginning that always felt more like an ending. She sliced through the packing tape on a box labeled Emma Books and began to place well-worn paperbacks onto a freshly built white bookshelf. Each book was an old friend, a constant in a life of variables. Her father, Chief Carter, appeared in the doorway. He was a large man, but he moved with a quiet grace that seemed to defy his size. He carried the last box, setting it down without a sound. "That's the last of it from the truck," he said, his voice a low, calm rumble that always made her feel safe. He surveyed the room, his eyes sharp and observant, cataloging every detail just as he had cataloged every new town, every new house for the past 10 years. "Looks good, Em," he said, nodding toward the bookshelf. "A room's not a room until the books are in it." Emma gave him a small smile. "I guess." She looked out the window at the cookie-cutter houses lining the street. "It's very green here." Her dad joined her at the window. He didn't just glance outside, he scanned. His gaze moved from left to right, taking in the neighbor across the street trimming his hedges, the 2 kids on bikes who wobbled as they tried to pop a wheelie, the blue sedan parked 3 houses down. Neighbor in the yellow house gets his mail at 3:15 p.m. every day. The kids on the bikes use the cracked sidewalk as a ramp. Blue sedan hasn't moved in 2 days. Emma sighed softly. It wasn't a test, just how his mind worked. "Dad, it's a normal street." "Everywhere is a normal street until it isn't," he replied, his tone gentle but firm. "This isn't about being scared, Emma. It's about knowing your baseline. It's about being aware, not afraid. Fear is a cage. Awareness is the key to the door." He put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You'll be fine." The next day, Northgate High felt like a different planet. The roar of chatter in the hallways was a physical force, pushing against her. She moved through the sea of strange faces, a ghost in a new machine, clutching her schedule like a life raft. In her first period history class, her teacher, a woman with kind eyes named Ms. Reyes, did a roll call. "Emma Carter," she said, her eyes pausing on Emma for a moment longer than on the other students. "Is your family new to the area?" "Yes, ma'am," Emma said quietly. "Well, welcome to Northgate," Ms. Reyes said with a warm smile. "If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask." It was a standard line, but something in the teacher's eyes made Emma believe she meant it. The question she had been bracing for came at lunch. A group of girls at a nearby table were looking at her, and finally one of them, a bubbly girl with a friendly face, came over. "Hi, I'm Sarah. Is it true your dad is like a secret agent or something?" Emma forced a small, practiced laugh. "No, nothing that exciting. He was in the military. He's retired now. He does private security consulting." Consulting was the perfect word. It was professional, boring, and invited no follow-up questions. It was her shield. Finding an empty table in the corner of the deafeningly loud cafeteria, she sat down. From her vantage point, she could see the entire ecosystem of the school. The athletes in their Letterman jackets, the theater kids gesturing dramatically, the quiet, studious types huddled over textbooks. And then she saw them. Cody and Lex. They moved through the cafeteria not like students but like owners making their rounds. Cody was all swagger and loud laughter, a cheap crown of arrogance perched on his head. Lex was his court jester, a step behind, mirroring his every move and laughing at every joke. They cut the lunch line, snatched an apple from someone's tray, and bumped a smaller boy, sending his books scattering. And through it all, no one said a thing. The other students just looked away, making themselves small, hoping not to be noticed. Cody's gaze swept the room, a predator looking for the weakest member of the herd. His eyes landed on Emma, the new girl sitting alone. A slow, cruel smirk spread across his face. He had found his target. Emma tried to ignore him, focusing on her sandwich, telling herself to just be invisible. She was aware just as her dad taught her. She saw him coming long before he got to her table. He and Lex walked by, not even breaking their conversation. But as he passed, Cody's arm swung out in a move that was meant to look accidental. It wasn't. His hand slammed into her tray. The cardboard milk carton flipped, erupting in a wave of white that soaked her sandwich and splashed across her lap. Her orange rolled off the table and under a nearby chair. Laughter erupted from a few tables over. Cody didn't look back. To him, she wasn't even worth a glance. He was already gone, his laughter echoing in her ears. Emma sat perfectly still, the cold milk seeping into her jeans, her face burning with humiliation. She didn't move. She didn't cry. She just watched him walk away, her hands clenched into tight fists under the table. She was aware, and she knew with a sinking feeling in her stomach, that this was only the first move. The spilled milk was a declaration of war. And in the week that followed, Cody waged it with 1,000 tiny cuts. It was never anything big enough to warrant a teacher's intervention, just a steady drip of cruelty designed to wear her down. One morning, she arrived at her locker to find the word freak, scrawled across the blue paint in thick, black marker. Her heart sank. She glanced down the hall. A few students saw it, whispered to each other and hurried away. No one offered to help. No one said a word. For a moment, she wanted to just turn around and walk out of the school. Instead, she took a deep breath, pulled a packet of wet wipes from her backpack and began to scrub. Her knuckles were red and raw by the time the ugly word was reduced to a faint gray smudge. She was 5 minutes late for class. A few days later, she was rushing to her next class down a less crowded hallway. As she rounded a corner, her right foot snagged on something taut and invisible. Her balance, honed by years of her dad's lessons, saved her from a full-on fall. But she stumbled forward, her heavy textbooks flying from her arms and skittering across the polished floor. She looked back and saw it, a piece of fishing line tied between the legs of 2 lockers. From the end of the hall, she heard a muffled burst of laughter. It was them. She knew it. With her cheeks burning, she knelt and gathered her books, the silence of the empty hall feeling more judgmental than any noise. The notes were the worst. They would appear on her desk, tucked inside her textbook, or taped to her chair. Crude drawings of her as a monster, words calling her ugly, stupid, weird. She never let anyone see her read them. She would calmly fold them into a tiny, tight square and slip them into her pocket, to be thrown away later. Each one was a small sharp stone pelting her shield of calm. Kyle, the boy with the kind eyes, saw more than most. He saw her scrubbing the locker. He saw her stumble over the tripwire. One afternoon, he found her sitting alone in the library trying to read. "Hey," he said softly, sliding into the chair opposite her. "I know you said you're okay, but no one should have to put up with that. Cody's a jerk. Everyone knows it." He pushed a book across the table. "I saw you drop this yesterday. The cover got a little bent." Emma looked at the book, then at him. His sincerity was genuine. It made her feel, for a fleeting moment, even more alone. "Thank you, Kyle," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But you shouldn't get involved. It will just make you a target too." "I don't care," he insisted. "It's not right." "I can handle it," she said, her tone final. It wasn't a brush-off. It was a warning. She was internalizing her dad's training. Observe. Absorb. Understand your enemy before you engage. Choose the time and place. Don't let them choose it for you. Her mind flashed back to when she was 10. A bully named Mark had pushed her off the swings at the park. She'd run home, face streaked with tears and dirt, demanding her dad teach her how to fight. He hadn't. Instead, he sat her at the kitchen table. He took out a napkin and a pen. "Okay," he'd said. "Mark is bigger and stronger. If you fight him his way with fists, you lose. That's his battlefield. You lose before you even start. He drew a simple diagram. Violence is a tool, Emma. But it's a loud, messy, unpredictable tool. It's what you use when every other tool in the box is broken. True power isn't in the fist. It's in control. Control of yourself. When you have that, you control the battlefield. That memory was her compass, the thing that kept her from snapping back. But Cody was growing impatient. His small torments weren't getting the tearful, broken reaction he craved. He needed to escalate. He and Lex cornered her by a side exit as she was leaving school for the day. It was raining, and the few other students were rushing for the buses. Going somewhere, freak? Cody sneered, blocking her path. Emma clutched her backpack straps, her eyes scanning for a way out. Let me pass, Cody. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. I don't think so. Before she could brace herself, he lunged and snatched her backpack from her shoulders. It was heavy with textbooks and he grunted with the weight. Geez, what do you carry in here, a bunch of rocks? Give it back, she said, her voice cold and even. Make me, he taunted. He looked at Lex, then at the open classroom window on the second floor above them. A wicked idea lit up his face. With a theatrical grunt, he swung the heavy bag around and heaved it with all his might. It sailed through the open window, disappearing from sight. She heard it land with a muffled, sickening thud inside the empty classroom. Cody and Lex doubled over with laughter, slapping each other on the back as they ran off into the rain, leaving her standing alone, her hands empty. She didn't run after them. She didn't scream. She closed her eyes, the cool rain mixing with the hot anger on her face. Her dad's voice echoed in her mind, a point of calm in the storm. When they push, you don't have to push back. You just have to be the rock they can't move. Stand firm. Eventually, they'll be the ones who have to go around. She opened her eyes, turned, and walked back into the school, her steps deliberate and sure, to retrieve her bag. We see so much of ourselves in Emma's quiet strength, but you can feel something is about to break. Where are you watching from today? And how does Emma's situation make you feel? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from you. That evening, Emma winced as she put on her long-sleeved pajamas. A dark, angry bruise was blooming on her left forearm. A souvenir from a particularly aggressive game of dodgeball in gym class where Cody and Lex had seen it as an opportunity for target practice. She had been hit a dozen times, each throw harder than the last, until one finally left its mark. She pulled her sleeve down, hiding the evidence. She sat at the kitchen island, quietly doing her algebra homework while her dad prepared dinner. The simple domestic sounds, the rhythmic chop of a knife against a cutting board, the sizzle of garlic in a hot pan, were a comfort. Her dad was a good cook. It was one of the skills he'd picked up in the service, learning to make a decent meal out of almost anything. As she reached across the counter for the salt shaker, a sharp pain shot up her arm from the bruise and she flinched. It was a tiny, involuntary movement, one most people would have missed. Her father, however, missed nothing. He didn't stop chopping carrots. He didn't look at her. He just spoke to the room. Had a guy on my team once. Tough as nails. Got a nasty gash on a training exercise, deep one. He patched it up himself, never said a word. Didn't want to look weak. Carter paused, sliding the carrots into the sizzling pan. 2 days later, the infection set in. We had to airlift him out. He almost lost his leg. By trying to look strong, he made the whole team weak because we had to stop and take care of him. He finally turned, his eyes meeting hers. They were filled not with accusation, but with a deep, knowing sadness. Never mistake silence for weakness, Emma. It's a tool. It's a shield. But you have to know when to put the tool down. It should never, ever be a cage. She swallowed hard and gave a slight nod. He knew. He didn't need to see the bruise. He was trusting her to handle it, but he was also telling her that she didn't have to handle it alone. The atmosphere at school the next day was heavy with a new kind of menace. Kyle intercepted her by the water fountain, his face pale and his eyes wide with genuine fear. He pulled her into the alcove, out of the main flow of traffic. Emma, listen to me, he whispered, his voice urgent. You have to be really careful. I heard Cody and Lex in the bathroom. They're not just joking around anymore. They're planning something big, something to really humiliate you. is going to happen after gym class. They were talking about getting into the girls' locker room, stealing your stuff. A cold knot formed in Emma's stomach, but her face remained calm. Thank you for telling me, Kyle. Stay away from them. His warning proved to be an understatement. When she got to her gym locker after class, her small combination lock was gone, and her locker door was slightly ajar. Her clothes were still there, but her school bag was gone, and her locker key, the one for her main hallway locker, was missing from the pocket of her jeans inside. Panic, cold and sharp, tried to claw its way up her throat. She beat it back down. Think. Don't feel. She walked to her last class of the day, her mind racing. As she approached the classroom, she heard Cody's voice. He was holding court, his voice loud and performative, a smug grin on his face. And you won't believe this part. My dad's a cop, right? So he has his buddy look up her old man, this Carter guy. Total fraud. Turns out he didn't retire. He washed out. Got kicked out of the Navy SEALs because he froze under fire. Left his team high and dry. A total coward. The word struck Emma with the force of a physical blow. Lies. Vicious, poisonous lies. They were attacking her father, the most honorable man she had ever known. They were twisting his sacrifice into a story of shame. She stopped in the doorway, and for the first time, her carefully constructed mask of composure didn't just crack. It shattered. The students near Cody fell silent as they saw her. Her face, usually so passive, was now a storm of emotion. But it wasn't fear or sadness they saw in her eyes. It was a cold, hard, profound disappointment. She was disappointed in their cruelty, their gullibility, their weakness. Cody saw her. He mistook the look on her face for defeat. He thrived on that. What's wrong, Carter? He sneered, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Truth hurt? Gonna go cry to your cowardly dad. He leaned in, projecting his voice so everyone could hear. Actually, don't bother. If your dad's so tough, why isn't he here? Why don't you call him? Oh, that's right. He's probably hiding under a rock somewhere, ashamed to show his face. The classroom was dead silent. Everyone was staring, caught between the bully and his target. The world seemed to slow down. The camera of the mind would have zoomed in on Emma's hand, hanging limp at her side. Slowly, deliberately, her fingers curled one by one, until they formed a fist so tight her knuckles turned white. The cage had just been rattled, and the animal inside was waking up. The final bell was less a release and more a starting gun. Every instinct told Emma to just leave, to walk out the door and not look back. But her school bag with her homework, her house keys and her phone was in her main locker. And Cody had the key. She had no choice. She walked towards the girls' locker room to change, a grim sense of inevitability settling over her. The locker room was hot, steamy, and smelled of chlorine and damp towels. It was also empty. Too empty. As the heavy door side shut behind her, a figure moved to block it. It was Lex. He wouldn't meet her eyes, his face a mask of nervous guilt. He was the guard dog. From between the tall rows of green metal lockers, Cody emerged. He was holding her locker key, dangling it from his finger. And he was smiling. It was a predator's smile, all teeth and no warmth. Looking for this? He said, his voice echoing unnaturally in the tiled room. You know, for someone whose dad is a supposed hero, you're pretty easy to push around. You're a military brat, and you're just trash like the rest of them. Emma stood her ground, her gym bag her only shield. Just give me the key, Cody. Give you the key? He laughed, taking slow, deliberate steps toward her. He was circling her now, enjoying her stillness, her lack of fear. It infuriated him. I don't think so. I think you need to be taught a lesson. People like you walk around all quiet and judging, thinking you're better than us. But you're nothing. He got closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. All those soldiers, you know what they really are? They're just thugs. Dumb animals the government points at people they don't like. They aren't heroes. They're broken toys. Every word was a calculated strike, aimed at the foundation of her world. Her father's honor. Emma's jaw was clenched so tight it ached, but her face remained a blank canvas. This was his battlefield. Words. She wouldn't fight him here. Are you done? She asked, her own voice dangerously quiet. Her calm was the one thing he couldn't stand. It was like a mirror showing him his own ugliness. With a roar of frustration, he lunged and shoved her with both hands. Her back slammed hard against the lockers, the impact a loud metallic clang that reverberated through the room. The air rushed out of her lungs, and for a second black spots danced in her vision. "I'm not done yet," he snarled, pinning her there, his face just inches from hers. His eyes locked onto the thin silver chain around her neck. From it hung the small worn dog tag. It wasn't an official military issue. It was one her father had made for her on her 8th birthday, on the eve of a long deployment. It was engraved with her name, her birth date, and on the back the words, "My true north. Love, Dad." It was the most sacred object she owned. "What's this little piece of junk?" Cody sneered, his fingers hooking around the chain. "A little prize from Daddy's cowardice?" His grimy fingers touched her skin. He tugged, pulling the chain tight against her throat. And in that instant, every lesson her father had ever taught her about restraint, about control, about choosing the battlefield, was consumed by a white-hot protective fire. This was not a battlefield of his choosing. This was a desecration. This was a line. Her reaction was not thought. It was pure primal instinct. As his fist closed around the dog tag to rip it from her neck, her body moved. She brought her right knee up, not wildly, but with a focused, desperate power, driving it straight into the soft tissue of his inner thigh. It was a precise, debilitating strike. Cody screamed, a high, sharp cry of pure pain and shock, and stumbled back, his grip on her necklace broken. He crumpled slightly, clutching his leg. That was the only opening she needed. She didn't wait. She didn't think. She ran. She shoved past a stunned and useless Lex, burst through the locker room door, and sprinted down the now empty hallway. Her breath came in ragged sobs, a mixture of fear and adrenaline. She heard Cody screaming threats behind her. High on the wall, the unblinking eye of a security camera silently recorded her desperate flight. 15 minutes later, she was sitting on a hard plastic chair in the sterile silence of Principal Donnelly's office. Cody was there, an ice pack pressed dramatically to his thigh, his face a mask of wounded innocence. Lex stood by his side, nodding along to the lies. "She's crazy. She just attacked me," Cody exclaimed, his voice shaking with feigned terror. "I was just trying to talk to her. Ask her why she was so upset, and she just snapped. She need me for no reason." Principal Donnelly, a man who saw students as potential paperwork, looked at Emma with weary exasperation. "Emma, we have a zero-tolerance policy for physical aggression. Is this true? Did you strike another student?" "He and Lex cornered me in the locker room," Emma said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the trembling in her hands. "He pushed me against the lockers and he tried to rip my necklace off my neck." "That's a lie. I never touched her," Cody shot back, his performance convincing. Mr. Donnelly sighed heavily. He knew Cody's father was a sergeant on the local police force and a vocal presence at school board meetings. An angry phone call from him was a headache he didn't need. This quiet new girl with no connections was the path of least resistance. "Emma, violence is never the solution," he said, his tone condescending as he avoided her gaze. "We cannot have students assaulting each other. Given your admission of striking Cody, I have no choice. I'm suspending you for 3 days for aggression." Emma stared at him, the injustice of it stealing her breath. She had been bullied, assaulted, and lied about, and she was the one being punished. It was a joke. Cruel, sick joke. She stood up slowly. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. A strange and chilling calm had settled over her. She gave the principal a single sharp nod of acknowledgement, turned and walked out of the office. She moved past the curious stairs in the main office, pushed through the heavy front doors, and walked down the steps into the afternoon sun. She walked slowly, her head down, a portrait of defeat. Once she was a block away from the school, out of sight, she stopped. She leaned against a tree, her entire body shaking. The look of the defeated victim fell away, replaced by a gaze of cold, hard steel. She pulled her phone from her pocket. Her fingers, still trembling slightly, moved with purpose across the screen. The message was short. 3 words. "Dad, it's time." Miles away, in the quiet solitude of his home office, Chief Carter was reviewing security schematics for a client. His phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen, read the 3 words from his daughter, and his face became an unreadable mask. He didn't text back. He didn't make a call. His calm demeanor didn't change, but a switch had been flipped. He stood, walked to the hall closet, and pulled out a simple unmarked black duffel bag. With silent, efficient, and deeply ingrained purpose, he began to pack. No reply was necessary. Action was the only reply that mattered. It's stories like this that remind us how strong we can be when we're pushed to our limit. If you believe no one should ever have to feel this way, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. The storm is coming. The next morning at Northgate High was bright and deceptively normal. The air buzzed with gossip, and at the center of it was Cody. Holding court near the gym entrance, he limped theatrically, reenacting his version of the previous day's events for a rapt audience. "I'm telling you, it was totally unprovoked," he bragged, his voice filled with self-importance. "One minute I'm asking if she's okay, the next she goes all psycho on me. It's a good thing she got suspended. The school's safer without freaks like her around." Lex and the others laughed on cue. The story was already becoming school legend. Emma Carter, the weird, quiet girl, was now Emma Carter, the violent lunatic. Her side of the story didn't exist. She was gone, and the school's social hierarchy, with Cody firmly at the top, was secure. In the administrative office, Principal Donnelly was trying to salvage his morning with a cup of coffee when the phone on his desk rang. The caller ID simply read Carter. He sighed, bracing himself for the inevitable angry parent phone call. It was part of the job he hated most. Principal Donnelly speaking. "Mr. Donnelly," the voice on the other end said. It was not angry. It was calm, controlled, and carried a weight that made the principal sit bolt upright in his chair. "This is Chief Carter, Emma's father. I was made aware of an incident involving my daughter yesterday, and her subsequent suspension." "Ah yes, Mr. Carter. A very regrettable situation," Donnelly began, falling back on his practiced, non-committal script. "We take all matters of student aggression very seriously here at Northgate. Have you reviewed the security camera footage from the hallway outside the girls' locker room from yesterday afternoon?" The voice cut in, sharp and precise. Donnelly faltered. "Well, no, I haven't had a chance yet." The situation seemed fairly straightforward. "I see," Carter said. A universe of meaning packed into those 2 words. "I will be there this morning to facilitate that review with you. I will be there at 10 o'clock. It was not a request. It was a statement of fact. Before Donnelly could reply, the line went dead. The principal stared at the phone, a cold dread creeping up his spine. "He's coming here," he muttered to his secretary, his face pale. "He's coming today." Word of the impending visit spread through the school staff like a wildfire. Teachers whispered in the lounge. The name Carter was now attached to a sense of ominous anticipation. At 9:55 a.m., just as Kyle was heading to his second period class, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Emma Carter was walking down the main hallway. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was suspended, but she wasn't skulking or hiding. She was walking with a calm, quiet purpose, her eyes fixed straight ahead. Her father had called her that morning. His instructions were simple. Go to school. Go to your classes. Let them see you are not broken. I will handle the rest. Her presence was part of the plan. At precisely 10 a.m., the front doors of the school opened and Chief Carter stepped inside. He was dressed in unassuming gray slacks, a dark blue polo shirt, and plain black shoes. He looked like any other suburban dad, but he moved with a disciplined alertness that set him apart. He didn't check in at the office. He began a slow, methodical walk through the school corridors. He was performing reconnaissance. His eyes, trained by years of operating in hostile environments, missed nothing. He noted the placement of the fire alarms and the scuff marks on the floor. He saw the faint, gray smudge on his daughter's locker where the graffiti had been. He saw the corner where the fishing line had been tied. He walked past the gym, and through the window in the door he saw Cody laughing with his friends, utterly oblivious. Carter's face remained a blank mask, but he filed the boy's face away. He was gathering information, painting a complete picture of the battlefield his daughter had been forced to navigate alone. The air in the school grew thick with unspoken tension. The students could feel it. The teachers could feel it. A storm was gathering, and it was about to make landfall in the heart of Northgate High. The bell shrieked, signaling the end of second period. The gym, which had been loud with a PE class, began to empty out. Cody, however, stayed behind, grabbing a basketball to shoot some hoops with Lex and 2 other friends. He was still feeling untouchable, the king of his small concrete kingdom. The rhythmic thud of the basketball against the polished wood floor was the only sound. The side door of the gym opened with a soft click. Chief Carter stepped inside. He moved with such quiet purpose that it took a few seconds for anyone to notice him. The basketball dribbling stopped. The idle chatter died. Cody's friends instinctively took a step back, sensing that this was not a casual visitor. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Cody turned, annoyed by the interruption. He saw the man standing there, plainly dressed, utterly still, watching him. He didn't recognize him at first, just saw another adult, another authority figure to be ignored. Then a flicker of recognition, or perhaps intuition, crossed his mind. This must be the dad. A slow, insolent clap started from Cody, echoing in the cavernous space. Well, look what we have here," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Don't tell me. You're Daddy Carter. Let me get a good look at the big bad war hero." Chief Carter said nothing. His face was a placid lake, betraying no emotion. His stillness was more unnerving than any threat. He took a single, deliberate step forward. The silence began to work on Cody's nerves. He lived on noise, on reactions, on controlling the conversation. This silent man was a void he couldn't dominate. "What's the matter, old man?" Cody taunted, needing to fill the quiet. "Cat got your tongue? Or did you just come here to cry to me like your pathetic daughter?" He took a step toward Carter and gave him a light, dismissive shove on the chest. Carter did not move. It was like shoving a granite monument. He didn't even seem to register the contact. His eyes, calm and unblinking, remained locked on Cody's. Frustrated and feeling his audience's eyes on him, Cody shoved again, harder this time, putting his shoulder into it. Still nothing. Carter absorbed the impact without a single flinch. In that moment, Cody's bravado began to curdle into a strange new feeling: fear. This man was not playing his game. What happened next was a blur of motion so fast and efficient it was hard to follow. It was over in 3 distinct, devastatingly simple moves. First, as Cody postured, Carter's left hand shot out with blinding speed. He didn't strike. He simply plucked the basketball from under Cody's arm. His grip was absolute, the motion so fluid Cody barely processed it had happened. Second, Carter brought the ball up and, with a practiced ease that spoke of thousands of hours of discipline, spun it perfectly on the tip of his index finger. The ball whirred, a perfect sphere in motion, a demonstration of absolute control. Third, with a powerful flick of his wrist, he didn't throw the ball at Cody. He aimed it past him. The ball flew like a missile and struck the thick metal support pole of the bleachers with a deafening, explosive clang that sounded like a rifle shot in the enclosed space. The impact was just inches from Cody's ear. He felt the wind of its passage on his cheek and saw the pole vibrate from the force of the blow. Cody stumbled back, a raw gasp of terror escaping his lips. His face was ashen. The smirk, the arrogance, the entire carefully constructed persona of the school bully was stripped away in that one violent sound, leaving only a scared, trembling teenager. Only then, in the ringing silence, did Chief Carter speak. His voice was not a shout. It was low, controlled, and carried more power than any yell ever could. "I didn't come here to hurt you," Carter said, his eyes drilling into Cody. He then glanced at Cody's friends, who were frozen in place. "I came to teach you a lesson your parents and your principal have failed to. This is what restraint looks like." He took one step closer and Cody flinched. "My daughter," Carter continued, his voice dropping even lower, "has shown more courage and more strength in 1 week of enduring you than you have shown in your entire life. Strength is not about how hard you can push. It's about how much you can endure without breaking." She did not break. He held Cody's terrified gaze for a final heavy second. Then, without another word, he turned his back on the boy, a final dismissive gesture, and walked calmly out of the gym, leaving behind a silence filled with shame and a lesson that would never be forgotten. The thunderous clang of the basketball hitting the steel poles still vibrated in the air. Cody stood, paralyzed, his tough guy facade completely crumbled. He had been publicly and profoundly humiliated, not by a punch or a shove, but by a demonstration of power so far beyond his comprehension that it had fundamentally rewired his understanding of the world. He was a boy with a stick who had just tried to poke a bear. His friends stared, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. One of them, who had been filming on his phone, slowly lowered it, the recording forgotten. The video of Carter's speech and Cody's terrified reaction was already being sent, zipping from phone to phone, becoming an instant legend. Lex, who had been Cody's shadow for years, looked at his friend's pale, shaking form not with loyalty, but with a dawning sense of contempt. He had followed a leader who was nothing but a hollow shell. Without a word, Lex turned his back on Cody and walked out of the gym, the first of many to abandon the fallen king. Meanwhile, Principal Donnelly was pacing his office, nervously awaiting Carter's arrival. When the man walked in, his presence seemed to shrink the room. Donnelly immediately went on the offensive. "Mr. Carter, I am running a school here. You cannot just march in and threaten my students." Carter stood before the desk, his hands clasped calmly behind his back. "I did not threaten your student, Mr. Donnelly. I gave him a practical lesson in physics. And I did not touch him." He paused, letting the statement hang in the air. "Now we are going to talk about your failures." He pulled a small black government-issue notebook from his back pocket and flipped it open. "On Monday of last week, my daughter's locker was vandalized with a permanent marker. No action was taken. On Wednesday, she was deliberately tripped in the West Hall. No action was taken. For a week, she has been subjected to verbal abuse and harassment. No action was taken. Yesterday in your gymnasium, she was pelted with dodgeballs, resulting in significant bruising." He looked up from the notebook. "Were you aware of any of this, Mr. Donnelly?" The principal stammered. "Well, children can be cruel. I can't be everywhere at once." Carter ignored the excuses. "Yesterday afternoon, she was cornered in the girls' locker room by 2 male students. She was physically assaulted, and when she defended herself, as is her right, you punished her. You suspended the victim." He closed the notebook with a sharp snap. "You did not check the cameras. You did not interview a single witness other than the aggressors. You took the path of least resistance because one of the boys' fathers is a police officer." He leaned forward, placing his hands flat on Donnelly's desk. His voice was still quiet, but it was now laced with cold, hard steel. "Your job is to provide a safe learning environment. You have failed. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to call the district superintendent and inform him of your gross negligence. You are going to review every second of security footage from the last 2 weeks. You are going to expunge my daughter's suspension from her record and issue a formal apology. And you are going to deal with Mr. Cody and his friends. If these things do not happen by the end of the day, my next call is to a lawyer, and the call after that is to the press. We can call this your move, if you'd like." He straightened up, turned, and walked out, leaving Principal Donnelly sitting in his chair, sweating and utterly terrified. The principal made the calls. The footage was reviewed. The superintendent was furious. By lunchtime, Emma's suspension was gone, and Cody and Lex were facing a disciplinary board. As Emma walked out of school that day, the hallways were different. Students parted ways for her, their whispers a mixture of awe and respect. Kyle caught up to her, his eyes wide. "My gosh, Emma. The whole school is talking. Your dad is like a superhero." "He's just a dad," she said with a small smile. "But he's a good one." She paused. "There's one more thing I have to do." She walked down the hall to Cody's locker. He was there, sullenly emptying its contents into a cardboard box, his suspension papers in his hand. He saw her coming and his whole body tensed, his face a mask of shame and fury. He refused to look at her, staring hard at the floor, expecting more humiliation. Emma stopped in front of him. She didn't say a word. She simply reached out and placed a small, folded piece of paper on the top of his books. Then she turned and walked away, leaving him in the silent hallway. After she was gone, his hands shaking, Cody picked up the note and unfolded it. It contained only 8 words, written in neat, precise script. You met my dad. Now meet yourself. He crushed the paper in his fist, the words burning into him. For the first time in his life, someone had held up a mirror, and he hated the person he saw. 3 weeks later, the echoes of the day of the dad had settled into a new reality at Northgate High. The power dynamic had been permanently altered. Emma Carter was no longer invisible. She walked the halls with a calm, unshakable confidence that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with self-possession. When students saw her coming, they still moved aside. But now it was with a quiet deference, the kind of respect earned, not demanded. Kyle fell into step beside her one afternoon, his grin wide. You're officially a folk hero, you know. I heard a freshman say your dad bench-pressed the bleachers. The legend grows. Emma laughed, a genuine, easy sound. It's getting a little out of hand. It wasn't about him being strong. It was about me learning how to be. As they passed the main lobby's bulletin board, a new flyer was tacked in the center, drawing a lot of attention. In bold letters it read, New After-School Workshop, Self-Defense and Personal Awareness. Below, in smaller print, Learn techniques for de-escalation, self-protection and building confidence. All students welcome. Sponsored by a generous grant from Carter Security Consulting. Her dad hadn't just put out a fire. He had started building a fire department. The first workshop was held in the school's auxiliary gym. A nervous group of about 15 students, mostly younger girls but a few quiet boys too, gathered in a loose semicircle. In the back, leaning against the wall, was Chief Carter, a silent, proud observer. Next to him stood Ms. Reyes, who had volunteered to be the faculty sponsor, her warm smile a beacon of support. But at the front of the room, ready to lead, was Emma. Dressed in simple sweats and a t-shirt, she looked at the anxious faces before her and saw herself from a month ago. She took a deep, centering breath. Hi everyone, she began, her voice clear and steady, filling the quiet gym. Thanks for coming. The first thing we're going to learn isn't a punch or a kick. It's the hardest thing to master. Staying calm when you feel scared. She paused, making eye contact with a particularly shy-looking girl in the front row. I knew someone, she said, her voice thoughtful, who used to think that being quiet was the same as being weak. She thought the only way to get through the day was to be invisible, to take whatever came her way and just hope it would stop. But she learned something. She learned that being quiet means you're listening. It means you're watching. And it means that when the time finally comes to act, you're not just guessing. You're ready. After the class, as the students filed out, chattering with a newfound excitement, her dad approached her. He placed a heavy, comforting hand on her shoulder. You did good, Emma. You found your voice. You taught me well, she replied, looking up at him with a gratitude that needed no more words. She turned her gaze back to the empty gym, a space that had once been a site of humiliation and was now a place of empowerment. In the final moments of the story, she looks forward, almost as if she can see through the camera, sharing the core of her truth with the world. Strength doesn't yell, she said softly, a statement of fact. It shows up. Emma found her strength, and now she's helping others find theirs. It's a powerful reminder that the biggest underdogs often have the most to teach us. If you were inspired by Emma's story, check out the playlist in the comments below. We've put together our best stories about quiet heroes who changed everything.